Have you noticed that this show doesn't have any commercials? I'm not selling you diapers or vitamins or smoothies or gasoline. That's because I don't want any corporate sponsors telling me what I can investigate or what I can say. Instead, you are our sponsors. This is a production by our nonprofit, the Informed Consent Action Network. So if you want more investigations, if you want landmark legal wins, if you want hard-hitting news, if you want the truth, go to ICanDecide.org and donate now. All right, everyone, we ready?
Yeah! Let's do this.
Action. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are out there in the world. It's time for us all to step out into the high wire. Yesterday was maybe, I think, one of the most important hearings, I think maybe in our lifetime. Certainly when we look at the world ahead and the one that we've been through. I'm talking, of course, about the Tony Fauci testimony in front of Rand Paul and the Committee on Homeland Security and Government Affairs. We covered it live here on the High Wire. I gave a preamble and closed out the show with some commentary from Aaron Siri. For those of you that missed it, I highly recommend. It's going to be on our website forever. You should check it out. But for those of you that missed it and haven't had the opportunity, just here's a little bit of the, I guess we were planning on fireworks. I don't know if you can call them fireworks. Maybe it's more like a flood or a mud wrestling match. Not sure, but you decide.
1 million Americans died from COVID-19. Some estimate as many as 15 million people died worldwide. Anthony Fauci promoted the theory that the virus arose naturally, while privately, he was well aware of a mountain of evidence suggesting the virus originated in the lab. Dangerous research was funded by NIAID in a totalitarian country, in a lab that lacked acceptable safety standards. The COVID lockdown could never have been inflicted without you aiding and abetting the crime. I hope today Dr. Fauci will come clean.
This hearing appears to be a culmination of months of biased and selected efforts by the majority under the guise of a committee investigation to basically legitimize a predetermined conclusion that was reached years ago. One-sided investigations designed to validate predetermined conclusions do not serve the American people.
Given Senator Paul's obvious obsession with calling for my prosecution, his repeated slanderous comments about me, his publicly releasing my unredacted personal diary aimed at embarrassing and intimidating me, the only conclusion I can reach is that the sole reason he is calling me before this committee is to get me to say something, anything, that could vindicate his repeated public pledges that I end up, in his words, quote, behind bars, unquote. Therefore, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions.
The Trump administration has launched a baseless set of smears against vaccines that help pull us out of that public health crisis. And it has used a politicized Department of Justice to target the researchers who helped us track and understand the novel virus. Today's hearing is another page in that playbook, sadly, tragically.
These attacks upon Dr. Fauci, it's not just about him. It's sending signals to others who are thinking about serving our country, our scientists, our doctors, our healthcare professionals, our researchers. Trying to show to them that if you don't get in line with the politics, that you will also potentially be subject to attacks.
I certainly understand why you needed a pardon.
I certainly understand why, on the advice of counsel, you're not answering any questions, because I think it'd be almost impossible for you to answer the questions truthfully without really demonstrating what you did.
The haphazard information you released and pushed on the American people with little research is appalling, and why there is so much distrust in our institutions today. That trust is crucial to public health, and you, more than any person or event in my lifetime, have destroyed that trust for millions of Americans.
Clearly, what you think today is that somehow you're above reproach. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace.
This is the pardon you have heard so much about. This pardon goes back to, and if you'll see, January the 1st of 2014. Did you talk to President Biden and ask for this pardon?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Did you specifically ask that it be dated back to the beginning of 2014?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
I'm just very interested why it was this date. Did it have anything to do with the fact that 2014 was also the year that the NIAID or NIH began funding EcoHealth Alliance's Understanding the Risk of Bat Coronavirus Emergence Grant?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Somewhere along the line, it became all about you. You became a narcissist and a megalomaniac and a liar. And you've lied to the American people, and you've lied to this body. And you've disgraced your profession by doing it. You called yourself the most famous scientist in the world. You've done more to harm science than anybody in my lifetime. And I hope you'll go home and write that in your diary.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc?
Well, it was really quite an amazing thing to watch one of the biggest mouthpieces in the world with virtually nothing to say except pleading the fifth. The official count, I believe, is 111 times throughout the hearing. He had to, and by the way, after 111 times, this man we have trusted with our lives still could not, I guess, memorize that sentence, but had to pick it up. I don't know if it was just to hold himself back from screaming, "You can't handle the truth." But something made him look down every single time and read every single word of the Fifth Amendment in order to escape, I guess, prosecution. But really, let's say it, here's the Fifth Amendment. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces, or in the militia when in actual service in time of war or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. But as I was going to say, really it wasn't prosecution that he was protecting himself from, it was persecution. He had blanket immunity handed to him by Joe Biden through this pardon. There was nothing that he had done, nothing that he could have said previously. All of his errors were exonerated. The only thing that could get him in trouble would be for him to lie on the stand on this day. That's it. Everything else, he was completely protected. And so what was he protecting himself? No. I spoke with Aaron Siri after this incredible display and asked him some of the understanding of the pardon and how that went along with it, and if we're going to see a contempt of court case. Here's what Aaron had to say.
The pardon that he got was for what he did in a certain period of time. The pardon wouldn't apply to crimes committed after the period, after the date of the pardon. You can't pardon somebody for future events. That would be pretty incredible. Could you imagine? Hey, you're pardoned for any crimes you commit tomorrow. Well, you know, some people might go commit a lot of crimes the next day. So if he lied to Congress today, then he could be held in contempt and he could potentially be prosecuted for that. That pardon wouldn't have extended to anything that he lied about today. But if he didn't lie today, even if he admitted to a crime from the past that was covered by the pardon, he couldn't be prosecuted. And that's why, you heard Senator Paul say to him, hey, I asked you, for example, about destroying emails. Even if you admitted that you destroyed those emails, if that pardon applies, nobody could prosecute you. You wouldn't be under jeopardy per the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
So he's like, just answer honestly, right? Now, here's the thing. I actually think that Fauci's lawyers made a big mistake in the following way. In that opening monologue that Fauci gave, okay, I've taken depositions where the litigant pleads the fifth to every question, right? But you heard at the end that they talk about, well, you can't come and give a statement and then plead the fifth, and that's exactly right.
Right.
You can't say I didn't commit the crime, and then when they ask you a follow up, you plead the fifth. No, once you've opened the door, so to speak, to a topic, pleading the fifth no longer becomes appropriate. You can't use it as a sword and a shield, right? So
right.
you either don't use it, or once you've used it. So, for example, in his opening statement, he said that Rand Paul slandered him. Well, I would ask follow-up questions about that. I'd say, well, how did I slander you, sir? How did I slander you? He opened the door. He said that Rand Paul slandered him. Well, what were the slander statements? He said, for example, I've had a decade-long cooperation with Congress. Okay, great. With regards to what? What did you cooperate? He basically in that one statement to me said, I testified 200 times. And in all that testimony, I was cooperative to me, which means I was honest, I was forthright. Great. He just opened the door, in my view, to everything with that one statement. And they could have driven a truck through that.
Well, I mean, that is going to be the conversation going into next week now. Our understanding is there is going to be hearings about contempt of court. Is Fauci in contempt of court for multiple reasons? Number one, he had a pardon. Some would say just having a pardon takes away any implication that you could, injure yourself or indict yourself upon your own words. He's already protected. So it really takes away the entire purpose of the Fifth Amendment. That's one argument being made. But Aaron and other senators actually made the point that because he made an opening statement, he's only allowed to come out of the gate and just say, plead the fifth. I'm not going to say anything today. As soon as you say something or try to make a point or defend yourself, now you have a real issue. So you should have, you didn't use your Fifth Amendment right. You're not allowed to make that statement. So I think all of this is going to be on display next week. And of course, there was the moment where his own attorney was dragged out. I couldn't hear the words, but are we to understand that the client, Fauci, is pleading the fifth, but the lawyer was going to still try to make arguments for him and on his behalf? Not allowed to do that either. So there's going to be a lot to look at legally on what really happened there. But I want to take it away from Fauci, really, because I don't really think that is what this hearing ended up being about yesterday. In fact, I was finding myself very confused and frustrated, and I couldn't put words to exactly what is it I'm feeling and experiencing here until Senator Moreno had this to say. Take a listen to this.
Those policies were put in place because you had moronic politicians that listened to the words of a megalomaniac who was more interested in having met a Kardashian than the suffering of the American people, and that is you. Your advice to communities like that, to idiotic politicians who enforce those rules, arrested that mom for watching a football game with her own family outside. When that story broke, I said to myself, I cannot stand idly on the side and watch this happen. It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people.
It really, what he pointed out there was what I found very disturbing. Okay, Tony Fauci is here pleading the fifth. He doesn't want to speak, but it was the Democrats there and their response to this entire thing that I found absolutely mind-blowing. I mean, mind-blowing. I don't know whether today I should be addressing this with rage or complete sadness. I think what I have is utter terror for the future of this nation if half of our governing body thinks this is what yesterday was about.
Thank you, Dr. Fauci, for coming on out in front of this committee. I know it's not what you would want. It's not what you deserve.
It is unfortunate that you have been put in the position that you are in today. And it must be enormously frustrating to know that this hearing is designed to entrap you.
Instead of focusing on the national security challenges that we are facing in our country right now, today's hearing looks backwards, revisiting questions this committee has already examined. Rather than building on that work to strengthen our preparedness against future disasters, we are instead relitigating the past.
This attempt to rebrand one of the most challenging times in our nation's history is a short-sighted act of desperation that will leave us less prepared for the next pandemic.
Since President Trump took office in 2025, more than 4,500 cases of measles have been reported. Children are dying because there has been increased vaccine hesitancy, fueled by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and frankly, his entire administration.
Republicans are eager to rebrand you as a villain in order to distract from their own failure to protect Americans.
That's what I wish we were having hearings about in this committee and in the Health Committee.
Essentially, every Democrat stated in one way or another, there's no purpose for this hearing. We need to focus on future pandemics and being prepared for them. Why are we looking in the past? I don't know. Maybe because, like, one of the most famous lines in history is, if we do not learn from our past or learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. Let's start there. But the fact that an entire party sans, one politician from Pennsylvania who actually said, I don't know why we can't take new questions despite where they're coming from. Of course, I'm talking about John Fetterman, the only man that said, look, I think there's some questions that have to be answered here. You think? You think there's just a couple questions that need to be answered? And instead they said this is grandstanding. First of all, I want to point a couple of things out. Can we all just be honest here for a second? This is not a political show. I'm not getting political. I'm an observer now of the United States of America that is sitting in a critical moment, having just gone through the greatest destruction of our civil rights we have ever experienced, brought on to us by our government, led by a health department, spoken about by one of the biggest mouthpieces, Tony Fauci, that's now sitting on the stand. But he didn't work for the Democratic Party. He is not, as far as I know, has never run in the Democratic Party. He was never elected. In fact, he was elected by a Republican, Ronald Reagan, and did most of the damage that this hearing is discussing under President Trump. I could understand, I guess, if someone wanted to shut this down, it certainly should have been President Trump. He should have been calling Rand Paul, shut this thing down. This makes me look bad. I should never have hired this idiot. I should have fired him once he was going against me and, committing what I believe to be treason. Trump didn't do that. Trump's not shutting this down. Not that, nobody should be. Why is anyone believing we should not be having this conversation? How can anybody with blood moving through their veins, especially, and when When did this issue become partisan? Republicans and Democrats all lost jobs during these lockdowns. Republicans and Democrats all had loved ones die inside of hospitals, and we couldn't stand with them because of Tony Fauci. Republicans and Democrats all have children that are having speech delays because they couldn't see lips when they were in formative years. Republicans and Democrats all had students that were on the verge of scholarships to go to college that couldn't play sports, that lives were forever altered. And now today we actually have new information. We have a document dump including a diary by Tony Fauci. He says, oh my God, you're revealing my diary, as though we broke into his house and stole it off of a shelf or from under his bed. He put that diary on a server on a government website that we, the citizens of the United States of America, own. A man who has forgotten you work for us used my computer system, my email system to write your diary. That is your problem, not ours, and thank God you did it. Because now we know you lied to the entire public. Now you know, even after saying in front of Congress you admitted social distancing just sort of appeared. Is there not a hearing worthy of just that? Because all of the things I just stated, not being with loved ones, not being able to do sports, people being dragged out of football stadiums in the fresh, clean air, were because you told us the science was distancing. I think one of the best presentations was by Republican James Lankford. He made such clear, concise points, and I think he knew this was going to be the argument. And I think what he's saying is, really, if we could come up with one question that all of us should want an answer to, would that not make this hearing worthwhile? Here's the question he had, and by the way, it wasn't his question. It was a question written in Fauci's own diary. Watch this.
February the 1st, same year, 2020. This is, again, still before our first death. There was not total agreement about the likelihood of deliberate insertion. Ron said he was sure that this could occur naturally, and we should not waste our time and divert our effort to pursue this. This is expected of him since he was the original gain-of-function person with Yoshi. Also, Christian was with Ron. The rest felt deliberate insertion was possible, and given the fact that Dr. Jingling Shi at the University of Wuhan has been working for years in gain-of-function in coronaviruses to allow adaptation of the spike protein to bind to the human ACE2 receptor, we could not let this go. That's a remarkable statement for February the 1st of 2020, when there hadn't even been the first death here, but we knew something was moving. You knew well that something was moving. You identified February the 1st before any of us had ever heard of the Wuhan lab, not only the Wuhan lab in the conversation, but literally the scientist that you named in your own notes, the lead scientist that was there. It's interesting to me on that. And the questions I was going to ask you was just your background and knowledge about the Wuhan lab and Dr. Shi and all the details.
In fact, Lankford goes on in that statement to say that you, even in your diary, question the WHO, saying that China has so much power over it, we should question, should we be interacting with China? Should we be doing science with China? All really, really important questions. And to find out that Tony Fauci himself knew that the scientists around him believed this was of potential lab origin, did question, should we be working with China? If there's one question we should all have is, and don't we, if we're going to protect from future pandemics, shouldn't we be asking this question? Is it a good idea to be developing viruses and giving them attributes of gain of function, of an ability to affect human beings with nations that could potentially be seen as our enemy, like China? Why not just get together with Putin too? Why don't we just throw some scientists in Russia and have Russia and America work on some deadly viruses and make sure they can infect human beings? Is this not a question we're all supposed to debate? Because this hearing is about gain of function. It's about, is this a good idea? Did we fund it? Not just Fauci. Did we, America, fund this? Did we create this pandemic that killed millions, mostly, I would say, from the vaccine itself, which was the best delivery system for this horrific disease. But Democrats all sit there saying, no, there is no question to be had here today. How are we going to protect the future if we are not asking these questions? Rand Paul makes this point very clear. This is what he did.
For years, Anthony Fauci has been the public face of saying this in all likelihood came from nature. He kept saying, it's the marketplace, it's the marketplace, it's the marketplace. He's been saying that on television up until recently. But what we find is that what he was saying in public is different than what he was saying in private. In January, in private, he wrote that looks like the wet market was a super spreader event. It didn't originate there. We know that some of the earliest deaths and sickness came from somewhere else. But then for years and years, we got dishonesty. So let's play the video so we can see a little juxtaposition of the problem we're dealing with.
Fauci's journal entries contradict what he said publicly about the origins of COVID-19. Fauci admitted in January 2020 that the initial outbreak of COVID did not occur at a wet market.
Take a really good look at the animal-human interface and the fact that animals from the wild are being brought into wet markets. You have animals that come out of the wild that are sold at these open, what they call them, wet markets. Wet markets, where you bring animals in from the wild who have these viruses. The wet markets in Asia, where people bring animals from the forest into market. There are wet markets in Wuhan that are ample opportunity for a virus to jump from an animal. The origin was from a bat to an intermediate host to a human, very likely in a wet market. And those animals should not have been in the Wuhan market. They knew that those animals should not have been in the market, and they immediately cleaned out the market, put restrictions on the kinds of animals that come into these wet markets. I think they should shut down those things right away. I mean, it boggles my mind.
What boggles the mind is that we know none of that was true. Now, even if you believed he just didn't know and really believed it was natural origin, then still we made a mistake in America, because let's be clear, here is the now positioned theory on the pinnacle of all of the world. House panel concludes that COVID-19 pandemic came from a lab leak. We also know CIA shifts assessment on COVID origins, saying lab leak likely caused the outbreak. That is our result, and the headlines go all around the world. Every investigation, nobody now stands in this was of natural origin. And so as we sit in this hearing, I have to ask every Democrat, and I know there's Democrats that watch the show. By the way, let me remind you, I was director of communications for a Democrat in the Democratic Party in the very last election. Okay, so I'm not that far away from it. Maybe it's why I'm so frustrated. But are we saying that no Democrat has a problem with the fact that we got that exactly wrong? And now we have an internal diary. We don't have to trick him into perjuring himself. His own internal diary tells us what we all already assumed, which he knew. This did not come from nature. It came from a lab. And so as I sit here and think, how are none of these things? These don't matter. To the Democratic Party, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. When you think we can prepare for the next pandemic, when we look at this one and we got everything exactly wrong. We got the origin of this virus completely wrong. And now the world knows everything said on the news was wrong. We got the social distancing wrong because Tony Fauci's admitted in front of the Congress that just kind of appeared and had no basis in science. We got that wrong. We got the fact that this vaccine would stop transmission completely wrong. Everybody caught it. Everyone had to change their tune on the news. And how did that happen? We're not allowed to have a hearing to ask what went wrong there? I was really shocked until I did you know that yesterday, right after this hearing, the Democratic Party just changed its official symbol? This blew my mind. This is what I grew up with when I was a Democrat, and now as of yesterday, this is the new symbol for the Democratic Party. Astounding. So as I think about what happened yesterday, and I've tried to understand. So many of us thought, when did the Democrats walk away from natural health? My body, my choice. Protecting the environment, protecting my water, protecting my air, protecting my food supply, protecting the products that are being injected inside of me. Where did that all happen? So many of us, I've been honest on the show, I'm politically marooned because I grew up a Democrat. But I've watched over these last several years as the Democrats say, we are the party of science. And they are the party of crazy zealot religions. I guess that is this divide, because we are clearly now. What is so terrifyingly scary and sad now about America is this canyon now between our experience of the greatest attack on our civil liberties that's ever been is so incredibly different. This is a Grand Canyon, a mile across and a mile deep. I don't know if I know how to build this bridge anymore. How is it we are this far apart? Because if you're the party of science, can we remember the scientific method? The scientific method was supposed to be departure from faith-based religion. The scientific method is supposed to say, ask us any question, challenge our theories, challenge our products, and may the best man win. We love the opportunity to defend the science, to, in a public forum, show you why we're right. We don't have to demand your faith. We don't have to call you a heretic. We don't have to see if you float or sink or if you're a witch or not. Those are the bygone days. We're in science now. We're the party of science. And then you look at Fauci, just like he's a vaccine, has been given complete liability protection. Why? If he's so pure, why does he need liability protection? But he has it. Complete liability protection. Nothing can touch him as long as he just tells us the truth. Isn't that what science is supposed to do? It's supposed to stand in the provable truth. And the party of science stood there and watched as the man with liability protection, who he himself said, if you question me, you are questioning the science. Well, we watched the science take the stand. And in front of the whole world, the science just pleaded the fifth. Let that sink in for a moment. And ask yourself, where are we at today? I have a huge show today. There are some victories to announce. Zen Honeycutt has done a dynamic job of actually getting a company to change its philosophy, its perspective at least, and clean up its product. And then I have a personal story also around glyphosate and the chemicals that are being given liability protection by even this administration, which is so disturbing. Apparently, poisoning is a nonpartisan issue. But this is the story of a young man whose life was completely altered just because he was out there working hard on other people's lawns. But first, it's time for the Jackson Report. All right. In so many ways, there's a feeling of a culmination of all of our work now that's coming to a head. At least that's the sense I get. I don't know. Is this thing just going to disappear in the night and be forgotten?
Yeah, well, Del, we're going to stick with this story because it's been 24 hours since the hearing has been over. And I'm witnessing something, a resurgence in the COVID conversation in America that's not going away. I was kind of curious what was going to happen. I was in a grocery store yesterday, and the guy in front of me looked like a retiree. He struck up a conversation with the cashier and said, hey, did you hear about Tony Fauci? He was just in front of Congress, and he was testifying. It's on the streets. It's like the Super Bowl or something. I've never seen anything like it. And a lot of people thinking this story will go away. There's a lot of people to blame for the failed COVID response.
Yes.
And you mentioned it in the intro there. 5 Democratic senators sat in that committee and did not ask one single question yesterday. But it's not just one political party. It's big tech. It's corporate media. And all 3 of these are seeking to grab the levers of power in America again. So that's why this conversation is really important to get through. Yeah. And I'm watching across the media here, there's really two types of responses, two tracks forming and two types of people. There's the people that are looking in to Rand Paul's brilliant document dump of the reading room, which includes Tony Fauci's diary. All of this information was put out, open source, publicly, months leading up to this hearing. And people are digging through this, researchers, journalists, normal people, people on social media, and making stories, making narratives. There's plenty in there. It rewrites the entire COVID conversation. And then there's politicians and media that just care to use the old narrative and say, this guy is being attacked and he's the science. This is a new time. The information is there. And so I want to go into this. We could spend hours telling stories about what is in these internal documents, these FOIA requests, and this diary. And again, this wasn't a diary off his nightstand. This was on HHS servers. Kennedy and his team did an 8-month investigation. They found, through 11 servers, they found Tony Fauci's daily entries. They gave this to Rand Paul. Rand Paul gave this to the people. That's how that happened. So we have this now. And I want to focus on this part of it just for today. And it'll be continuing to come out. And this was Drew Weissman. Heavy hitter. You can go through, by the way, you can go through this diary and you can pull out days of conversation about how narcissistic Fauci was, how egotistical he was. He cared more about his fame and his awards than actually getting the science right and telling the truth. But the real conversation here, in my opinion, was a mandated vaccine that had liability protection. And we have Drew Weissman, who co-won the Nobel Prize for developing mRNA technology that allowed Pfizer and Moderna to make this vaccine that went into the arms of so many people around the world. He writes to Tony Fauci in February of 2021 this conversation. He said, Tony, I wanted to alert you to some new data we generated with our nucleoside-modified mRNA LNP. That's a lipid nanoparticle. I attached the current version of a supplement request that has all the new data. He says, I've been working with a maternal fetal researcher, and we observed that using a dose 100-fold higher than current vaccines and given IV, the mRNA LNPs go to the placenta and the fetus, measured by translation of the mRNA, and cause an immune response in the amniotic fluid. If you're a woman and you're pregnant, an immune response to the baby that you're having will cause a miscarriage. This is science 101. You do not want an immune response to your own body. Yeah. Continuing, Drew Weissman says to Tony Fauci, in non-pregnant female mice, the uterus and ovaries take up mRNA lipid nanoparticles and translate the mRNA. We're repeating these studies with human dose levels of this LNPs given intramuscularly and are waiting to release the findings until these studies are completed. Tony writes right back, same day. He says, Drew, thanks for sending this. Looks like you have touched all the bases of informing people of your results. It'll be interesting to see what human doses levels given intramuscularly do. I hope that all is well. Not, holy cow, we got to go back to the board. We got to talk to the CDC. Who are you talking to about this? I need to see the studies right now. I'm flying there. Stop everything. Not Tony Fauci. Tony Fauci does not do any of that. And in fact, Drew Weissman then writes him back less than a month later. He gets the results back from these intramuscular human trials and says this. This is on March 1st, 2021. Tony, here is the human dose intramuscular studies in pregnant mice. We still have some concerns over the data, and we are talking to all the appropriate people. We still have concerns. 1 month later,
well, read that next line because it came up yesterday, all the prizes. Just go back. Congratulations, by the way, on the Dan David Prize, which everyone was talking about, the megalomaniac there. That was where he was focused. Now, to forget everything I just said here, probably just said, oh, thank you for the congratulations, I'm winning prizes. Not like, Houston, it looks like we have a problem with pregnancy. Continue. Sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, that email is a microcosm into this push-pull of narcissism and red alert science. And he's choosing awards, narcissism, all of that. So 1 month after Drew Weissman, the Nobel Prize winner for mRNA lipid nanoparticle technology, says, we have a problem. Our technology is going to the fetus in mice studies, going to the placenta, is causing an immune response. Tony Fauci goes out and they begin, CDC, FDA, everyone green lights this shot for pregnant women. Here's Tony Fauci at that exact time he wrote this in his diary. Take a look.
The next is the question of the vaccination of children, namely pediatrics and pregnant women. As we all know, these were not included in the original clinical trials that led to the EUA for the 2 vaccines that are currently available. But I want to point out that since the EUA and under the EUA, approximately 20,000 pregnant women have been vaccinated with no red flags, as we say, and this is being monitored by the CDC and the FDA.
Wow. I mean, there are people that compare him to, Mengele and others. They certainly were not as good at the publicity tour because apparently half of this country, or the world maybe even, considers this guy a hero.
Right. So he says there, the CDC is monitoring this. We've been told repeatedly the CDC has the world's best monitoring system. One of those monitoring systems specifically for that COVID shot was the V-Safe system. This is a system where people could sign up. It was an app, and they get the shot, and then they can log all of the things that happen after that shot, including the injuries. Well, the CDC never gave that to the public. A lot of people gave a lot of information to that tracking system, this adverse reaction tracking system, essentially. And it was the ICANN lawyers who sued and won in court and received this documentation, this V-Safe documentation. And here's our headline from 2024. Fourth V-Safe production reveals a disturbing trend in miscarriages and menstrual disturbances. Goes on to say this, ICANN's review of the free text records produced to date, which are only a fraction of the total set to be released by CDC, reveals at least 500 reports of miscarriages and more than 2,000 reports of menstrual disturbances. Lipid nanoparticle mRNAs go to the fetus. Wow. They go to the placenta. They cause immune disruption. This is the V-Safe data. Tony Fauci kind of left that out. And
this is the database. I just want to let everyone know, just right now you're looking at, you can go to our website, icandecide.org. We have an entire interactive dashboard where you can scroll and ask any question you want of the V-Safe data, all the free text fields. We spent years suing for all of that data. Remember, this app was the phone app built by the CDC to track nearly about 10 million people that got the vaccine. This is what they reported themselves, from click-the-box issues to writing in issues that weren't presented. Super fascinating. That is there for everyone watching. If you're brand new to the show, it's free for you to go and check it out. All right, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and so that's really what we're talking about here. But in the last 24 hours, we saw an interesting phenomenon. So as the world waits for next week for a Senate vote for Fauci to be held in contempt of Congress for not answering questions, very, very pertinent questions he was brought in front of that committee for, you're starting to see, I don't know what the word would be, but a lot of the key people within this architecture of the failed pandemic response come out and start to do a media tour. I don't know if they think they're going to be next on that hearing stand. Number one, Deborah Birx, Dr. Deborah Birx. Take a look at her. She received a hero's welcome on News Nation.
All right.
When President Trump said to me, we will never close down America again, as what happened, in which I couldn't understand how that happened so rapidly. We put out guidelines to slow the spread, and the next thing we know, everything is closed down. Now I know that Dr. Fauci was having private conversations with these governors and mayors to tell them to close the schools and to tell them, while we were trying to figure out how to contain the virus without doing all of that. A long way of saying, you have to follow what your commander-in-chief is saying to you. That doesn't mean that you change the science. It doesn't mean you change the data, but you figure out a way to execute the plan that they want. So when President Trump on, I think, April 4th said, we'll never do this again to the country, we pivoted to how do we bring testing so that people are aware of their status? No one wants to infect anybody else. But if you get them tests, instead of quarantining people who are exposed, you just only tell the people who are infected to stay home. That is a very different approach. It worked fabulously in universities. It's why we were able to keep them open, and Secretary DeVos was working on keeping K through 12 open. There were solutions, but it became very political, and we all have to be aware, because it was a presidential election year, it was really important for blue states to show that they were taking it very seriously, and they overclosed. And we just have to be honest that happened. And that's why that discussion from both sides of the aisle and a resolution and a way to go forward is critical so that we can do this right in the future.
Whoa. It feels like a scene from The Godfather or something, right? Like one of the mobsters is on the stand and the other one starts singing to the press. Oh, yeah, it was all him. It was all him. It's all his idea. Let's not forget, by the way, that Deborah Birx, we've talked about this, like exchanged the epaulets that really were, I think, who she was working for in the Department of Defense. That is who was holding that position, but they changed to a different set of style choices, this scarf to make us forget that it was really, I think, a military operation. And when you read Scott Atlas's book and many people around it, they said she was the one that was all about lockdowns, not Fauci was into the vaccine. It's wild.
Yeah, and she's saying, I don't know how this happened, these lockdowns. This is the one time I will stand up for Fauci. Fauci was not the architect of the lockdowns and the policy. Fauci, according to his diary, appeared over 1,700 times in the first 2 years of the pandemic. He was the media bullhorn, and he was the one that was supposedly going out into the public to cover up the Wuhan lab, the funding, the vaccine injuries, all of that. He was the mouthpiece for that, the front man. Deborah Birx was, I guess, the bag lady. She was the one doing the dirty business in the government. So just to backtrack this, so you know, it wasn't, we overclosed a little bit. That's called the lockdown, and it hurt a lot of people. But here's the headline here. She was named White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator. That is the top policy person in the United States running the entire COVID response, from policy to vaccine mandates to closures. And you can see here in this next headline, pretty soon after she got in there, she starts contradicting. Top Trump advisor bluntly contradicts president on COVID-19 threat, urging all-out response. She put the pedal to the metal. This was her and the people that she surrounded her with, National Security Council, everybody. And so she's in there in February of 2020. By March, this is Deborah Birx. Take a listen.
All of the flu models predicted anywhere between 1.6 and 2.2 million fatalities if we didn't mitigate. I think you all knew those numbers. Some of them predicted half of the United States would get infected and have that level of mortality. So we've worked very hard together to really look at all of the impacts of the different mitigations that have been utilized around the world and use that evidence base to really bring that data and that evidence to the president to consider for extending, which is not a simple situation when you ask people to stay home for another 30 days. And so they have to know that we've really built this on scientific evidence.
So she's the one saying 15 days to slow the spread.
Video cameras rolling. Yeah. I don't know who extended it.
So it was 15 days to slow the spread until she got involved. Then it was 30 days, and then it's 4 years. This is Deborah Birx, and you can see that she's going on this media tour because she's probably trying to get ahead of a subpoena.
It's really fascinating, Jeffrey. And you know, I guess in some ways, if there's a fear that that he somehow got around it, seeing that reaction from her shows there is some concern now over this. And again, you know, why would the Democratic Party align with a guy that got so much wrong at the very least? But they now know that there's this document released. If they didn't, and Rand Paul says they've had access to this website and that not a single Democrat has signed on. Well, bad on you, man. If I'm going to go and stand up for someone I thought was my friend but is being accused of a crime, and someone says, here's the evidence we have on them, I think I'd read that evidence. I think I would read that evidence before I go on the stand and put my credibility and my entire existence and understanding of what we believe in. Before I put that on trial, let me make sure I know everything about this case. And now we know this guy was admitting he knew he was wrong, or in essentially was lying the whole time. This is an incredible moment, Jeffrey. And honestly, so much of this, I wonder if this is even happening if we weren't on this as early as we were. And the very few news people, especially like podcasters maybe, but we were there all alone when this started, bringing the truth. And now, as you said, it is a conversation in a grocery store between a clerk and a retiree going, what is going on? That is the question of the day, of the week, of the year, maybe of this generation. Jeffrey, thank you for your incredible reporting. Really appreciate it. All right, we'll see you next week. Look, if you've been watching the High Wire all of these years, then in many ways, none of this is a surprise to you. If any of this is a surprise to you, then it's probably a sign that you've just started watching the High Wire. But I stand by everything we've ever said here, and I never forget that I said it in front of a camera. I know I'm being recorded. I'm proud of the fact that I'm being recorded, and I stand by this time capsule that is the High Wire and everything we said throughout these periods. We told you the vaccine would never stop transmission, not because we guessed, not because there was a crystal ball, because we were looking at the same information Tony Fauci was, written by the FDA in the emergency use authorization. We told you that this virus was not as deadly as they said based on the studies done on the cruise ship and looking at Italy and around the world, and lo and behold, we were right. We lost our YouTube channels and Facebook channels for telling you that this looked very suspiciously to have a human insert from a lab pointed to lab origin, and then we're just labeled as misinformation, but we never stopped. All of those labels, all the censorship, you moved over to our website. You realized you could type in www.thehighwire.com. Thank God you still had that still left in you. And we survived. In fact, had record numbers all throughout COVID. And here we are in a moment where the science is pleading the fifth, and we're staring into a very scary future. Who's going to be there for you? Who's going to keep telling you the truth no matter what it takes, no matter what they say about us? Who's going to bring the lawsuits to make sure that some of these things can never legally happen again? That's us. That's Aaron Siri. I don't know who else is doing it. Go ahead and write me in if you know anyone that's won more lawsuits against the government of the United States when it comes to medical freedom. If all of those things matter to you, and if you think that the history might repeat itself, and that maybe you want to have the best fighters on the front line that you know about, then we need your help. Please become a recurring donor today. Don't just sit and watch. This isn't a spectator sport. This is the future of humanity that's hanging in the balance. You can use this QR code. You can donate by going to the top of the page at highwire.com. We're looking for you to be a recurring donor. But look, if you can make a large donation, if that's easier for you, or maybe you've come into an inheritance, or you sold a company, or something's going really well, or maybe you want to donate to a very special lawsuit or a project we're working on, reach out to us at info@ICanDecide.org, and we'll have a direct conversation with you about how to allocate your efforts in the right place. For everyone that has made this possible, for everyone that was allowed to gloat yesterday and say, I knew all this to be true because of the High Wire, for all of those that made this happen through your support, I thank you, and I look forward to all of you that are about to join the Informed Consent Action Network now. I want to just let you know another way. Tyler Hudson's book. Tyler Hudson, by the way, huge show last week, had this book, The Missing Lyrics. We had, I think, 25 signed copies that we gave away with Faraday bags. It disappeared off the shelves before we got through the show. So we have now got this book in our bookstore. For everyone that missed this opportunity, go ahead and go to our bookstore at highwire.shop. This time it won't come free with Faraday bags, but while you're there, you can buy one. I use one. I don't know. I have a little bit of a paranoia that someone's listening in on me. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's not. What do they say? Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not trying to kill you. Anyway, we have the High Wire. We got a brand new one, the ICAN Faraday bag. You can find them both at the bookstore. We are fighting not just on vaccines and medical freedom. Medical freedom also includes the right to choose and the right to be protected from poisons and toxins in our environment. ICAN was instrumental in working with Vani Hari and many of the health experts that are out there to bring the People versus Poison March against Washington, D.C. We were able to get them to pull the liability protection for glyphosate out of the Farm Bill, but unfortunately, the Supreme Court gave them that protection. A really dark day for America. Well, I think that this next story tells us why, and for every lawyer that fought for liability protection, for every Democrat and Republican that's out there that maybe thinks that glyphosate is a national treasure, needs to be stockpiled and protected so that we never lose access to it. Maybe this story will be what it takes to make you have a second thought about it. Watch this.
We're in the woods of Tennessee, out in the sticks, Hickman County, where there's just a bunch of ticks and chickens. The accent, you can tell I'm from down under. Always had an American dream, landed in Nashville for music. Did that for a bit, got married, and then I was like, I want to raise my children away from chemicals, away from the city, away from everything, and have 12 children actually. Arden, Isaiah, Cherish, Chalice, Cedar, Vision, Getty, Breeze, Shepherd, Haven, Remnant, and Solace. We brought ourselves some beautiful acreage here in Tennessee, and we did organic farming. Everything my children ate basically was from scratch. I made my own bread. Everything we could do to just give them the best start possible. We didn't have chemicals in the house. We cleaned with the vinegar. We were trying to remove them from all of the nasties. My oldest son, Arden, he was the leader of the tribe. He was out there working the gardens with fish manure and all of that stuff. We didn't use any chemicals on them. His brothers and sisters and cousins all ran wild here together. When he was 17, he took a landscaping job. The more jobs that he could do, the more money he could make. So he was just hitting it hard. It was within a few weeks that I noticed he started being constantly itchy. Like he'd just sit there and just be itching. He wasn't sleeping well at night. He was eating less. He was always my big eater. But he had a fiance and he was in love. I was just thinking maybe he was just living on love. The day of the wedding, my son, I was looking him up there, ready to see his bride. He looked so pale and I'm like, this is not my son. After the wedding, I'm noticing my son's neck thickening, just a really odd shape. He had gone for a doctor's checkup. He calls me. I remember the day. He's like, Mom, got cancer. I just remember screaming. My worst nightmare is my firstborn, and he's got cancer. How? Hodgkin's lymphoma. A couple of months into the diagnosis, it just kept bugging me. You were healthy on our farm, then you go take this job. What happened out there? He started telling us it was spraying Roundup around the cell towers. One day, he was jumping over a fence. He had a lid pop off of his backpack sprayer. It dumped on his neck and dumped on his shoulders. He didn't really think that that was a big deal. You know, he just got his water bottle and just sprinkled it over his neck and shoulders, and he didn't get to have a shower until that evening. This chemical was soaking in his skin all day. And he's like, Mom, that's where it began. The scans all show exactly where that soaked in area from the Roundup. That's where it began. And that's not what normally happens with Hodgkin's lymphoma. There should be other lymph areas involved, and anyone can connect these dots. I go into mama bear mode. To me, conventional oncology is freaky. Like, it's the worst of the chemicals, you know? We asked the doctor, do we have time? And he's like, Hodgkin's lymphoma is the best cancer that your son could have been diagnosed with. It's slow growing. You have time to go and try your natural stuff. We threw all our savings to take him down to a wonderful clinic in Cancun. They treated him the best with all that they had. But you know, this was not a regular Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was not indolent or slow growing. It was so aggressive that it went from first stage to almost third stage while he was down there in just a few weeks. I couldn't even see his features anymore. I remember that car trip back. I was just holding my husband's hand, like all I wanted to do was just scream the whole way back. All I wanted to do was scream. It was very hard seeing it progress at a very aggressive nature, like it was steamrolling over my son. It was eating him alive. All of the extended family got together every night and just hung on his neck and prayed. He would sit there in that prayer meeting. There was part of me that was like, stand up, Arden, like have faith. I need you to have faith. I want you to have a will to live. Can you have a will to live? Like, stand up. But he didn't have energy for grit. I called the main head doctor and I said, what do I do? I said, I can't just sit by and watch my son die. And he's like, I would get him to Vanderbilt right now. He needs something big. We were sending him for everything that a hospital had, every poison that they had to throw at this cancer. Hopefully it wouldn't kill him to kill it. Arden walks into the hospital and they take one look at him and they admit him immediately to the intensive care unit. They knew he wasn't going to survive. It was a training hospital as well, and they had 30 doctors coming in and measuring and documenting because it was the worst case they'd ever seen. This cancer was born of a monster. It's not meant to be this way, you know.
I am joined now by Arden's mother, Serene.
Hi.
Serene.
Hey,
Hey, good to be here.
Thanks for joining
I'm
me.
sorry. I was watching here, and I haven't seen a lot of that footage in a while. Of just some of those really intense moments. You know, we've been living for a while not in that dark valley, and it was just hard to see it again.
Yeah, this story really, it rocked a lot of us here at the High Wire. We all have kids. I have a teenage son that's, strapping, beautiful, 17, right at that same age.
Mm-hmm.
And you imagine, you're going to send them out in the world. You don't want to be, overly anxious or like, there's a reason why I raised you the way I did. You're hoping they're going to make good choices. And in this case, this all organic, beautifully designed and built kid goes out and gets himself covered in a deadly toxic chemical. In that in going through that, the spiritual life, how important was that for you to be? I mean, was there a moment you're questioning God, like, why my son?
I never questioned God. I have a very strong faith, but my walk with God was the only thing that got me through that time. I just remember feeling like I can't breathe. I can't go through another day not knowing if my son is going to make it. It should be children bearing parents, not parents bearing children. And it was like, there was just times when it was so like, it looked like he was going to go in a week, and it was just, faith was the only thing. We all, my sisters, we brought surrounding farms to each other. And so we all raised our children close to each other. So the brothers and sisters and cousins, they were all kind of like one gang, running through the Tennessee woods. And so when Arden got cancer, we had, in the very, very thick of it, 17 and a half weeks, where every night we just prayed, like hanging on his neck, around the tumors, just praying. I think it was just, our faith was the only thing that really got us through to another day. Every night we would be like, okay, we're having another prayer meeting. And it's just, I look back at that time and I know it was our faith that got us through. He is a miracle.
Oh.
He's a miracle.
Yeah. And so in that process, coming from a very holistic place, I'm assuming you don't rush to doctors very often and,
I don't have a primary care doctor for my children.
Yeah.
We just go to the emergency room if they get a big, cut off their leg, in a tree. Yeah.
So, you start out on a holistic path. How hard was it to transition into, I'm assuming like heavy chemotherapy and everything else, right?
Oh, super hard. I remember, when we had to take him to Vanderbilt because the head doctor down at the clinic in Mexico, I was like, if it was my son, I would just get him. He's got to go somewhere where there's something really nasty, something big to break the back of this aggressive cancer.
Yeah.
Because you have to give natural time to work, and we don't have time for him.
Right, you're running out of time.
So I remember him going for his first chemotherapy treatments, and I would just be bawling. And I remember him coming home and him saying, "Here, Mom," and giving me a lock of his hair.
Oh.
And I just bawled because it was like, it's that first lock, when I gave him his first haircut, back when he was little, I had that saved. Never did I think that I'd be holding another lock of his hair, but it's because he's like dying and his hair is falling out because of chemotherapy. Chemotherapy to me, from my natural, crunchy whole persona, it was like, that means death. You're just shoving poisons in them.
Yeah.
But it was part of his healing story because he needed something aggressive to give him time. But we did natural. We did an integrative approach, and so he just still did all of the green organic juicing, and just his diet was impeccable, and he was just really working hard on alternative treatments as well. We tried everything. He did so many rounds of chemo, he became chemo resistant.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long was this whole journey, this period?
7 years.
7 years of hanging on for dear life as a mom.
Yeah.
And how do you, you have 12 kids, the whole family to hold together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was difficult. It was hard for my husband and I, but it was hard for more than just our family and our children, because we were a community that was so close. Because I really feel like it made a lot of the young people think, oh, life is really precarious. And, I think it was hard from a child's lens.
You don't want kids to be thinking about that much, right? It's not, you want them to think you're going to be okay. Don't personalize this. Well, I think to really get into this incredible journey and the turning points of it, why don't we see how Arden's doing now? He's in the house. And so let's have Arden come out right now. All right. Holy cow! Wait, did you guys hear that? Did you feel that? Not skinny and pale any longer.
Not. You see that pick mark? When you did that, when you showed your bicep?
Actually, a little story on this. I was one of the longest, people to have a pick line in my arm. So for the longest time. So,
Wow. Well, you look fantastic.
Appreciate it.
What a journey. So from your perspective, first of all, I just want to ask the question, your mom raises you perfectly clean, perfectly healthy. Did you know that you were spraying poison underneath cell towers?
No, nobody, I didn't know. The people I worked for didn't know. Actually, it was quite the opposite. We thought it was fine, oh, no problem, just wash it off, not a problem.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it just, did you see the packaging or was it just coming in giant, I'm just
curious. It came in giant bulk bottles that you would then water down with a big water tank. We had a big...
Splashing all over you.
Yeah, a 200-gallon water tank in the
it.
back of the truck, and then you'd fill your backpack sprayer up and you'd throw it on your back and...
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, tell me about the moment where, would you go for a basic checkup or was this thing starting to bother you?
It was a basic checkup, just like my wife and I went. I actually told her, I was like, hey, I want to just get checked up. I don't know why entirely. I think it was maybe just another issue, but it wasn't like a big issue. Just like, let's go get a checkup. My wife set the appointment up and we went and I had a bump right here on my clavicle bone. And the doctor was like, how they do, they check you around. And he was like, you might want to get that checked out. And then I was like, okay. I was like, what could that be? He said, Hodgkin's lymphoma. I said, what's that? What's Hodgkin's lymphoma? And he's like, cancer. At that point, I'd never thought about cancer for me. I always thought old people or unhealthy people got cancer.
Right, sure.
Never
That's
even
the way it used to
entered
be.
my mind, yeah.
Yeah, kids aren't supposed to be getting cancer.
No.
And so, how quickly your mom talks about it progressing? Was it weird? I mean, the images that we have of you. I mean,
Crazy.
You look like Quasimodo or something.
My father-in-law describes it as an alien sucking the life off of my neck.
Yeah.
It was very fast, yeah.
And I mean, look at these tumors in the X-ray. When you think about that was going on inside of your body, it's just astounding you can survive that in many ways.
Well, and actually, one of the things there on that photo, when we first were diagnosed, the doctors at Vanderbilt, like my mom said, one of the worst cases of Hodgkin's lymphoma they'd ever seen. The doctor pulled my wife aside and he said, hey, he's probably not going to make it. If he does, his lymph nodes will never get back to normal size because they're that big. Because it's not just a tumor. Lymphoma is like blood cancer, like leukemia. It weaponizes your lymph nodes to swell up and become the tumor. So that was like, he told, he's probably not going to make it. His lymph nodes will never get back to normal size if he does. And they were like baseball, it's like this.
Jeez.
Constantly. I couldn't, you felt this pain under your arms. I could actually feel like a jabbing pain always, just like little pain around my neck. 24/7.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was his spirits? You said he was weak. Is he a good patient? Was he positive?
He was amazing. I mean, it just blew my brain. Just the maturity with which he walked through such a hard valley. He would entertain us. He would do little slapstick, humorous little skits for us with his big tumors. I think his positive attitude was a lot of what got him through as well.
Yeah, probably.
So then, we talked about, and I think a lot of people watching this would go on this, begin a natural journey, natural route. I pray I'm never challenged with having to make that decision for myself. I mean, I can't even imagine, please God, never my kids. But, for you, there's this moment where it's just not working. right? And this idea that we're going to have to get more aggressive. What did that feel like, that thought? Is it all sort of just, is it all just a part of the same journey, or are there these blocks of time where
we definitely had some like pause points where you're like, okay, whoa, this is happening. But at the same time, you almost had to surrender yourself to it because it happened so fast, and you almost didn't have a choice.
It's like 3 weeks, right, that we were down in Mexico.
Yeah.
And it went from first stage to, I thought it was third, but you said it was fourth stage.
Yeah, it went from, my wife and I flew down with my parents. We got there, and we're essentially, I mean, obviously I was skinnier and smaller just as an 18-year-old then.
Yeah.
But went from kind of healthy person to like, I had a little bump, but at the end of that, it was like,
it just went haywire.
Crazy aggressive. And that was the problem. Over the 7-year span of having cancer, I'd get clear scans, it would come back. I'd get clear scans, it would come back, clear scan. It just over and over again. And we were like,
Yeah.
Did you feel positive? Did you always have a sense you were going to survive it, or did you have moments where you're accepting a possible end?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it really hit home when I had my first child, my daughter. I always tried to keep a positive mindset, especially around other people. I felt like that was my job, to be positive for other people, my wife. And my wife was probably the one who knew all the more of my feelings than anybody else. But especially my mom, you want your mom to never have to fear or worry.
Yeah.
So
you're not dumping on her as much. Mom doesn't need any more stress.
Fear was dumping on her.
Yeah.
I never confided like my true fears to my mother.
Yeah.
It'd be my wife, and even at that, like I remember when my wife and I had our first child, our daughter, and this is in 2019, and I remember being robbed of so much joy because I'm like, am I going to be here for her? Am I going to be the dad in her life? Is my wife going to have to find another husband? Like, is this going to happen? So like, it was like that balance of like worrying, but also like trying to keep it at bay and like trying to fight. I don't know.
So you went a holistic approach, went into chemo. Is there a thing, I mean, for people that are out there, I know medicine is different for every person, so there's no one solution, but was there anything that you sort of point to that was a turning point where I feel like we got a hold of this thing?
I think, just something that I would give advice to anybody, doesn't matter what cancer they have or what age, is, try, like, if sometimes you need chemotherapy and some of these terrible drugs to beat back the intensity of the cancer. Yeah. But don't just take that drug and take it for granted and just start eating. You got to eat right. You got to move. Yeah. You got to gain muscle. Muscle mass is one of the biggest parts of our immune system. It's not just for aesthetics. It's not just for strength and function. It's for whole health. Yeah. And so many different illnesses. And that's kind of what at my sickest in some of those photos there, I was 125 pounds. Wow. I'm 6'5".
Wow. 125
pounds. And now I'm 225 pounds.
Right.
So I had to gain a lot of muscle.
I remember him after the stem cell transplant where they basically lit him up with chemo, nuked his body, radiated him, and then they kind of bring you back from the brink, and flood your body with those stem cells.
And they're your own, they've drawn your own stem cells?
So I did one of those where they draw my own stem cells instead of somebody else's, less chance of host rejection.
Yeah. But I remember him just looking so pale, so weak. But he got this fire within him in that stem cell stay where he felt like crap on a Ritz cracker is what he would tell me.
That's my line. You can't take my line.
Yeah. And he's like, oh my goodness. And then he got this fire within him. It's like, no, I'm going to fight. I'm going to fight this. And he felt like he couldn't even swallow because he had like sores and blisters down his esophagus. And he's like, no, I'm going to eat protein and I'm going to ask for an elliptical to be brought into my hospital room. And he started working out in the hospital and feeling terrible, hardly being able to do it, but walking like a mile. How long did you walk
walked
every day?
A mile pretty much every day while I was that's on the 6th floor there, getting the treatment, and 16 laps was a mile. So I tried to get 16 laps a day. Wow. But really, it kind of started around when I was having my wife and I had our daughter. I just was like, I used the excuse, I can't do this because I have cancer. I can't do this, and I'm maybe not good at this because I'm sick. And using it as an excuse and a crutch. And as terrible as, having these chemicals and being sick and cancer is, I was like, I no longer wanted to be defined by it. So that was where that flip switched. I'm like, I got to actually fight. So I wanted to make my body the most undesirable place for illness to live. So I was working out, no longer using it as an excuse, but maybe as a story, telling people, but hey, this is my reason why I'm doing it, not why not.
Well, you're an inspiration to our audience. You actually are working to inspire other people, both of you, with your work. So why don't you stick around, and off the record, I'd love to hear what you're up to now. But we'll talk about the fact that they said you were never going to have kids, how you got through that. But congratulations.
Thank you.
Both of you, and what a testament to, in many ways, modern medicine and God's grace.
Oh, yes.
There are moments, there's a lot. If you want to follow his journey, I think do we have a website? Here we go. Undefeated.men.
That's my socials,
That's your socials, and anywhere else we should be checking out what you're doing?
Yeah, we have Facebook, I have a website, and you can also follow me on it personally as well. So,
okay. Yeah. All right, great. We'll have a little bit deeper conversation.
Appreciate it.
Off the record. Thank you for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Well,
obviously, if you've been watching this show, we all have a concern about glyphosate, whether it's spread on you. But we saw what happens when it gets on your skin. Can you imagine it inside your stomach, or how about the stomachs of your children? What if you're getting a product that by design is supposed to be healthier, and that one is testing off the scales? We had Zen Honeycutt on our show to talk about exactly that. Watch this.
Glyphosate, this is the most widely used herbicide in the world, 280 million pounds a year in the United States. And the highest level that we found of glyphosate was in Banza pasta. We found over 2,800 parts per billion on this chickpea pasta, which touted itself as a low glyphosate pasta because they were testing and monitoring for glyphosate. That's what they told one of our supporters before we even did the testing, and we tagged it a low glyphosate pasta, and then it came back to be the highest level. Now, keep in mind that 2,800 parts per billion is the highest number ever recorded by the lab that we used in human foods. It is, however, lower than what the FDA allows. The FDA allows 5,000 parts per billion of glyphosate, or the EPA set that level in food. So they will claim that this is a safe level.
Well, that was Zen Honeycutt, obviously discussing her issue with Banza pasta. That was all the way back in July of 2024. Well, she is joining me now with an incredible update. It's my honor and pleasure to be joined once again by Zen Honeycutt. Zen, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great, Del. Thank you. I bring good news for once. I'm so glad.
Okay,
I'm
good.
really glad to be here.
Yeah, it's nice to actually, have a win in the win column. But what is that win? Tell me all about it.
Well, the win is that less than a year of that news of Banza pasta having very high levels of glyphosate detected on their dry pasta, they turned it all around. They actually listened to us. It mattered to them. They talked with their suppliers, and they did 4 major things. They shifted the sourcing to drier climates where desiccants like drying agents of glyphosate would not be needed. And they earned the Detox Project Clean Scan certification, which is less than 10 parts per billion, which is considered non-detectable. And they actually got contracts with those suppliers to make sure that they wouldn't spray not just for glyphosate, but for other desiccants as well.
Wow, great.
And with the Clean Scan certification, they also tested for 400 other pesticides. That's huge.
Wow.
And then they also tested with us. They partnered with us. We tested the same 18 samples that they did, and we came out with results that were extraordinary. I mean, on average, their levels were 543 times lower than their original levels, and even the highest level of 10.29 parts per billion was actually 275 times lower than their original findings. Than our original findings, I should say.
Yeah.
So it was far lower, and they did this in less than a year. And by the way, I don't see that the prices of Banza pasta are going up, right? It doesn't look to me like it's costing more. So it's really exciting news.
First of all, what kind of technology are you using? Like when I think about 10 parts per billion, that's pretty specific. I mean, we hear it's in there, but I mean, it's beyond a trace. That is almost non-existent. But what kind of study is being done that gets us those types of numbers?
Yeah, so HRI Laboratory is the lab that we used, Health Research Institute Laboratory, started by John Fagan. He's the one that started Project Non-GMO Project Verified. You remember that lab? So he's been at this for a long time, and it's an ISO accredited lab. They use MS, I believe it's called mass spectrometry, detection. And the other lab, I believe it's Geneva Labs that Banza Pasta used. They use a different methodology, but it's also, can really detect very low levels of glyphosate. So I was glad to see that both methodologies came up with pretty much the same results. So that was great news. And when something was a little bit off, our lab especially double tested, right? And for instance, when one result was 10.29 parts per billion, which is over 10 parts per billion, they double checked that, and then they also cooked it. And when they cooked that pasta, it was less than 10 parts per billion. So we can safely say that according to the testing that we've done on 18 samples of the Clean Scan Banza pasta, that if you buy Banza pasta and cook it, you're going to get basically a non-detectable level of glyphosate. That is huge news. It's historical, and it's an example for the entire food industry that they can do it too. Considering the Supreme Court ruling that just happened, giving chemicals immunity from lawsuits, and our president making glyphosate basically a national security asset.
Right, crazy.
Those were some pretty depressing blows to our movement.
Yeah.
But with this win, it shows us maybe it doesn't matter what the government does, but the government can do those things, and we can still get glyphosate off our plates. So I'm really, really happy about that.
Zen, I think you are proving that the power of the people is greater than the power of an HHS secretary and maybe even the power of a president. It's what I've always loved about you. You take no prisoners. Sometimes you seem outmanned. You go up against, insurmountable odds in many ways, but you keep coming away from victories. I love supporting winners on this show and people that take it upon themselves. I'm just curious, when you do something like this, you seem like a nice person. This is a company that's trying to put out a product that is supposed to be healthy. They're, celebrating that it's, got low toxic chemicals, and then you discover that's not true. What were the original interactions? Was anybody angry, or did they come out and say, we want to work with you right away? I'm just curious, what was that relationship like?
Yeah, so at first, Banza was not very happy about the results because they were shocked, obviously. And I don't know that if it's related at all, but there were 2 doctors on Instagram that attacked me viciously. I mean, it was like character assassination. They just went to town, and they really tried to vilify us. So we were extremely unhappy about that. But Banza Pasta says they had nothing to do about that.
Okay.
My guess is maybe Bayer or some other chemical company might have supported those trolls. Right. So it was a little rough at first, but when they came back and they showed that they were serious, that they wanted to test a significant number of samples with our partnership, I was like, okay, let's do it. So we did.
It also, I think, shows another weakness, right? Let's go ahead and assume this is a company that you don't brag about having low levels of toxic chemicals as a part of your marketing unless you are working on that. So these suppliers, it's that it goes beyond even what these companies that make these products. I've talked to many that say things like, getting milk products that don't have any antibiotics in them and things like that. It's just that we have a supply chain that is so contaminated. And a lot of times you're working with a supplier that has a great product. They don't tell you when they've switched where they're sourcing their materials from. And so you'd be making a statement and then all of a sudden get undermined by something that was completely out of your control. And there's no protections on that right now, are there, for these companies? I mean,
no. Yeah. There's just so much that we don't know, Del. It's really frustrating. I could get people being frustrated by they want everything tested. And so the first thing a lot of people do is ask us, well, have you tested this other pasta? Have you tested this? We want Bob's Red Mill now to step up. They had the next highest level of glyphosate in gluten-free products. I mean, people eat gluten-free products to avoid glyphosate because, glyphosate has been irritating them. So we want Bob's Red Mills to step up. But, we need support to get this testing done. So I do want to make an appeal to your audience and We love you guys. Thank you so much for your support. And I also want to thank our team.
I don't want to stop there. How do we support? Because I was going to bring that up when people are like, well, are you testing this? Are you testing that? I don't know. Are you funding us to test that? So Zen needs help, everybody. She's out there. She's like a one-man wrecking machine against an entire political system. A team. But you take the heat. There's something about being the person that's out there. You're the one that gets the phone calls. I appreciate your team's there. But how do we support that you're doing? It is a nonprofit, correct, that does this work?
Yes. Yeah, we are a nonprofit. You can go to momsacrossamerica.com or .org, and you can click on donate, that little button right there next to take action. We'd like you to do both. But you can donate, and we're looking for people to donate $10 a month just to be a part of the testing team. We want 1,000 people to donate $10 a month, and with that, with $10,000 a month, we could test at least five of the top samples of a category. And next, Del, we're looking at doing pet food, and we want to do either cat or dogs, dog food. Yeah. And so for $10 a month, we're going to have a page up very soon on this. Right now, you can just go to donate, but we're going to have a page up where you can vote and which dog food or cat food you want. And we also have more testing coming out very soon. I'm not going to say what it's about yet, but very soon we have more testing coming out in another month. So please keep supporting us. We really appreciate it. We need to expose the truth. There's nobody else doing what we're doing at this level because we trust this lab that we work with to get down to the very, very low levels. And to tell the truth with us. And as you can see, it makes a difference. I mean, these companies do want to change. They do want to sell healthy, good food. And we should give really a lot of credit to Banza Pasta for tackling this head on and not just vilifying us and making us wrong, but saying we're going to do something about this problem. And they did. And to the farmers, thank you so much for growing chickpeas without using glyphosate as a drying agent. It can be done, Del. It can be done.
Are there any other studies you're looking at or concerns you have in the work that you're doing looking forward right now?
Yes. So this news just shows how important it is to really know whether or not glyphosate is in your food. So you want to look for Clean Scan or Tested Clean. Those type of, the glyphosate detox project is one that is, you want to look for that Clean Scan label. Because especially when you're pregnant, there's a new study out now by NYU Langone that showed a significant increase in a higher risk of preterm birth, which can mean miscarriage, right? Before 37 weeks in 1,450 women who tested positive for glyphosate. So especially when you're pregnant, it's very important. The number was either 35 or 37% higher. I'm not sure exactly which one, but that number correlates with a pig study that I knew about probably 13 years ago. A man named Id Peterson tested 30,000 pigs when they had, or showed that 30,000 pigs when they had glyphosate sprayed grains, they had a 33% increase of miscarriages.
Wow.
So we have known this for a very long time. And there was also a study of 71 pregnant women who had a higher risk of miscarriages and birth defects when they were exposed to glyphosate. So whether you're in a farming community or you're just eating food sprayed with glyphosate, it is especially important when you're pregnant to make sure to eat organic and avoid foods with glyphosate on it. And I don't want to put more fear out there, but clearly it makes a difference when you do. And it does improve your health. And within 2 weeks, you'll see significant health improvements, sleep improvements, behavior improvements, weight loss, all those types of things when you avoid toxic chemicals in your food.
Great information, super important. Of course, the story we just watched today of, we're talking to Arden and, spilling this stuff on you, very bad. Imagine the stuff inside of your stomach, all the places. And then you're pregnant. We're seeing it in the placenta. We're seeing it crossing blood-brain barrier, all of these issues. So I love that you're out there, Zen. One more time, if we want to support you, momsacrossamerica.com.
.com or .org, either one.
All right, either one. Very good. Hey, everybody, let's support the work that Zen's doing. And Zen, I look forward to having you report another win sometime in the future.
Thank you so much, Del. Thanks to the team.
All right, you're welcome. Take care. Well, Zen is doing such amazing work. I love doing this show, celebrating all of the heroes that are out there. So many of you watching, I know, are being heroic in your own time. And I really, as we watch a Fauci trial or hearing like that, You know, a lot of things we talk about is, you know, he'll have his moment in judgment with God, you know, those that have a spiritual journey. I don't know how that all works. I'll leave that to the moment that happens. But what I do know is there will be a judgment of my own life. And that is what I really think about a lot is, and I've said it on this show, I don't get to decide how long I'm here on this earth. I only get to decide what I'm doing with the days that I've been gifted with, and each one is a blessing. And, you know, you hope that when you reflect on your life, that you have been fulfilled, that you know, that day was a good day to die. And I know so many great warriors and people that have lived like that. But we lost one this week. Trish Neuenschwander is one of the great warrior moms that has stood by my side from the very beginning of my journey on ICANN, the highway, all the way back with Vax. She was the wife of the president of the board of ICANN and the head of MAPS, Dr. James Neuenschwander. They've worked together. She has guided him on his journey in many ways, and I know my heart goes out to James in this incredible moment. She lost her battle with cancer, but what she never did was lose a battle for the truth. She took the microphone whenever she could. In one of these clips, watch her as she stands powerfully on a microphone at ASIP when we started infiltrating these meetings, and just look to see who's sitting beside her, who she's standing over as she was making her point. Take a look at this.
My name is Patricia Neuenschwander. I've been a nurse for nearly 25 years, and I have witnessed an increase in neurodevelopmental disabilities and chronic disease in our children over those 25 years. The literature also reflects that this increase is happening. The vaccine schedule has rapidly increased from 12 doses in 1983 to 72 doses in 2017. We have gone from a 12% rate of chronic disease in our children to a rate of 54% in 2011. Although it feels really good to protect children by preventing infectious disease, what if it is at the cost of chronic disease? There have not been any placebo-controlled studies done as they're considered unethical for vaccines. There are no long-term safety studies that look at the schedule or the combination of vaccines that are given to children. There's an urgent need for long-term higher quality studies that look at the long-term effects of neurological and immune system outcomes in children. Can this committee ask or demand from the CDC that they conduct a large study using the VSD to evaluate the health outcomes in children fully vaccinated compared to children who are completely unvaccinated, to try to give us an idea if we may be trading infectious disease for chronic disease, and is it worth that cost? I care very much about the health of children. Thank you.
You can tell how intelligent people like Patricia are and why. You're a pediatric nurse practitioner.
Correct.
And obviously you understand this issue.
I was a very, very pro-vaccine person. I fully vaccinated myself and my children. I was appalled, shocked. I tell doctors when I talk to them, like, you need to go watch these meetings. It's appalling what they're basing these vaccines on. It's limited this and probable this and maybe this. There's no clear science.
No real input, but we have an output out of a model.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like we were bursting out laughing.
And I believe that they were extensively studied, and doctors believe that. Nurse practitioners right now, they believe without ever looking that they're being thoroughly investigated. And when you go there and sit there and you hear what evidence is being used to support this, it's appalling. It's appalling.
I want to thank you for, your ability to speak and the fact that you're really stepping out and talking. I know you talk to other nurses and doctors, and you've been very outspoken on this, and I hope you'll keep that up. We have a great article about Trish at thehighwire.com in the editorial section. If you want to get some of the thoughts of our team, she worked closely with us. And I also want to say what a total blast she was. So much fun, the life in the room, a bright, beautiful smile, and don't get near her during a Lions football game, ferociously competitive. Just an incredible human being. Trish, we'll miss you, but you'll never be forgotten. You live on in our hearts. I've fielded a lot of phone calls over the last, 24 hours since this hearing. I've heard many, many different perspectives of what happened there. One of the common ones is an incredible frustration. This sense that his pleading the fifth, that he got away with it. He's laughing at all of us, and, you know, he's walking off into the sunset. I pride myself in the one thing that if anyone said, like, what's your expertise? I would say from the time I was 3 years old, I've been studying human beings. I'm that annoying kid at the adult table that won't sit at the kiddie table asking questions of the adults in the room, and I have never stopped asking those questions. Most of what I know is because of the interviews and the questions and the conversations I've had through my life, all in the study of human beings. I think I have a pretty good understanding most of the time of what makes people tick. It's what you do in media, but it's also how you think about you're going to bring legal cases in all of the work that we do. And I want to say this because I think this is what, as I really thought about it and listened to many of your thoughts as the day went on, I began to really have a warm feeling in many ways about this hearing. And this is what I want you to know, and I want you to think about this. I had said many times when people are like, oh, I want Tony Fauci to be, you know, the guillotine or whatever. And I would joke, you know what I want Tony Fauci? If I'd like I would love for him to be in a cell where all he does 24 hours a day is has to listen to his own word salad excuses and statements that he's made on news, his own lies, that he would have to sit and just listen to what we all had to listen to, all of his baloney for years and years and years. I thought that would be the ultimate punishment, really. But if I think about what happened yesterday, and I'll speak also from my point, but Tony Fauci loved the camera. He loved to talk, and most importantly, when you watch every Rand Paul hearing, boy, like anyone that likes a good debate or a fight or a person that loves to talk, he loved to have the last word. And I think about, like, I personalize everybody's story. I've said many times, I wrote screenplays in Hollywood for a while, and you have to think, what makes the bad guy tick? And the truth is the bad guy's a human being. You got to find your own attributes, and I'll be honest, you all know I'm a talker. If you ask my wife, one of the difficulties is I need to have the last word. And she'll even say to me, Del, you just got to know when you have finally won the argument, all right? It just gets redundant. But we all know people like me that talk a lot, and Tony Fauci is one of those. If I'm to equate to one of the things that we share in common, I happen to spew truth, and it's backed by science, and I show you my science, but you get the idea. This is a man who never stopped talking. That would just on and on and on. Love to jump in front of the camera. Love to jump in front of Donald Trump. Love to talk. Love to have us all hear his opinion. And here, yesterday, in the final moment where it's going down, this is the last record potentially of him that will ever exist in the court of public opinion, certainly that will be documented inside of a government agency. This time, instead of talking and yammering in, you don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Rand Paul. Instead, he had to sit down, shut the F up, and let everyone in the room have the last word. I assure you, for me, and I think anyone that does consider themselves to be a talker, that's a fate worse than death. If I had to sit and have everyone else speak about me, and in some situations for me, that would be the worst day of my life. And I thought about it. It's really like the Wizard of Oz, right? Take away all the flying monkeys that are terrifying everybody, dragging them out of football games, dragging them out of bays where they're surfing out in the clean air, force them into their homes, using all the power of the big wizard voice and the media working on your side. This man who literally made the truth be described as conspiracy theories and misinformation, whether it was on lab origin or social distancing or lockdowns or vaccine transmission, lie upon lie upon lie, yet he had the power to censor all of us. He used his voice and the power of the wizard, if you will, to intimidate the world. He censored us. He stopped us. But on the final day, when it all came down to making the final point, the curtain was pulled back, and this sad, tiny little man was left with no other option but to censor himself. Think about that. So the High Wire, we're going to keep doing what we do best. And I'll see you next week.
Sad little man sitting deep in a lie. He's dead in his soul, but he'll keep you alive. Do what he says, not what he do, 'cause the truth is for him and the lie is for you. Sad little man, but he's treated like a god, as the faithless prey to a fake and a fraud. Worship the man, pledge to his word. One shot, two shot, now you get a third. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. Sad little man, gonna trap you like a dog, put your head in a net while they eat you raw. Don't ask why, just comply, 'cause fear is the drug that the doc prescribed. Sad little man, you can watch him on the news, preaching to his choir while they learn the rules. Some feel safe and some feel healed, but they'll all hold his hand as he makes the kill. Sad little man, you better run now while you know you can. Sad little man, you don't fool me, you sad little man. Sad little man, and he wants your kids. Some might live while the rest get sick, so put them to the test and listen for the yell. When the truth comes out, he's gonna burn in hell. Sad little man, you better run